and welcome to Affected, a podcast from Meet. For those of you who don't know Meet, we are a global life sciences talent provider. We've been connecting the industry for over a decade, and now we want to share some of our insights and experiences with you. We'll be hosting monthly episodes, sharing thoughts from our leaders and industry professionals about job hunting and hiring in life sciences, as well as giving our network a platform to share their own experiences of building successful careers in an industry that affects us all.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Affected podcast. As always, I'm your host, Owen Beynon, and this week I have the absolute joy of being joined once again by King of LinkedIn himself. The man who pays my bills is Glenn Southam. And we're joined by Zach and James from Kitt Medical, who are doing some unbelievable work in the field of anaphylactics. I could tell you about their product, but I think, Zach, it'd be amazing if you could just give us a brief overview of what Kitt Medical is doing and sort of the service you guys are providing.
Yeah, sure. So you can see the kit behind me. Essentially, it's just like a defibrillator, but for allergies. So the idea is all about really my struggles of being, an allergy sufferer for most of my life, the issues of carrying pens, the issues of a lack of awareness and training.
Can we talk about your sort of history with allergies growing up? I was doing a little bit of LinkedIn stalking the other day, and I was reading a post. I think it was a comment you replied to someone about the fears you had going out to restaurants and stuff as a kid, and sort of, what was it? I think it was pasta and butter you were saying on this comment, which sounds weird, like I've been stalking your personal things, but that's really interesting. That like it's something I have never struggled with, and I think a lot of people don't, and sort of just that understanding that these are the things that people with allergies have to sort of like think about, especially when you're young.
I pretty much grew up on a diet of plain pasta, butter and salt. I mean, I didn't have to. My parents wanted me to eat everything, and I had plenty of opportunities to eat well, but I was worried about my allergies. I was a picky eater and pretty unhealthy, and all three of them just came together in this perfect storm of like, okay, I'm just not a risk taker when it comes to food. And so for the longest time, I didn't try any new foods. I mean, I found out I was allergic to nuts at 5 years old. Essentially, along with the plain theme, I was offered peanut butter on toast by my best friend's mum, and I instinctively hated the smell of peanut butter. I never tried nuts, so I just said no. I asked for butter on toast, and the same knife was used, and there was traces of peanut butter on that toast was enough to give me severe swelling, stomach pains, vomiting, thankfully not full-blown anaphylaxis, which is typically categorized by airway issues, but enough for me to identify something was wrong. My parents to get me tested, got a skin prick test with all the major allergens up my arm, and found out I was allergic to pretty much all nuts, a lot of legumes, and a few other intolerances here and there. And
so I assume that was sort of the trigger then for you to sort of go on and think about creating what is now Kitt Medical. When we spoke for the first time, you were telling me about your university journey and sort of development of the initial idea and sort of bring it to life at the university. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, James's sister has allergies as well, and I have a lot of friends with allergies, and I know a lot of people with allergies, and it's this very common thing that you just don't carry your adrenaline pens, and that's because they are bulky. They're easy to forget. They expire every year. And I think there's this thing that when you don't use them, you end up thinking you don't need them. So most people don't have them on them. And then essentially there comes a time where unfortunately you do need them because you have a reaction. And that's where we see this loss of life often because the medication just isn't there. The training isn't there. As a university student, particularly someone who was going out with friends, student union and stuff, I didn't want to carry my pen, so I didn't. And I look back on that and thinking how ridiculously stupid I was. But I wanted to redesign the pens to make them more accessible. After, I think, half a term's worth of research, I found loads of people were doing that, and it wasn't solving the problem. Loads of students had tried it. So I looked at, okay, you've got public medication like, even fire extinguishers or defibrillators or first aid kits, bleed kits. What are they doing, and how could that be done with adrenaline pens? They need to be put there. They need to be secure but accessible. They would need, adrenaline pen sort of expiry date monitoring and controlling, and then of course training. And so that's really where the fundamentals of the kit came from. It was just this deep-seated need that I identified selfishly, but then knew that a lot of other people would resonate with.
This is my ignorance here. Why do you think it's different to, I don't know, maybe diabetics? Because people who have diabetes and need insulin, they quite often carry around with them. Why do you think it's like different there?
I mean, I think the most obvious thing I can think of is that diabetics need the insulin very regularly.
Yeah.
Whereas people with allergies just rarely use their adrenaline pens. It's like that one time, it's that one occasion. It's like, how often is the insurance policy or the fire extinguisher used? It's that similar thing.
I'm really interested as to when James sort of jumped on board and sort of helped you take the kit to the next level, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the podcast, because you guys are doing some unbelievable things right now. But it'd be really interesting to hear when you sort of joined the journey and what you brought to the life cycle of the product.
Yeah, so I actually met Zach it must have been 2018. We went on a holiday with different friends, but our friends overlapped, and stayed in touch here and there. It was lockdown though, where kind of we really got talking about this all. Zach had just graduated from Loughborough. He was doing some freelance, and I was working at an edtech startup called Zen Educate. And during lockdown, they supplied teachers to schools. Schools shut down. They furloughed a lot of their staff. And thankfully, that actually gave me some time to think about kind of what it is I wanted to do and work on. And I was loving working there, but I always kind of wanted more. I wanted to see what I could do to make a difference. I love the idea of like marrying kind of positive social impact, business building, and putting it all together. And so we went on a lockdown walk. It must have been during the first lockdown when we could, obviously when we could, and it was socially distanced, of course. And Zach shared with me his idea and what he was working on. I was like, that's a bit brilliant. I had a couple other business ideas at the time, none of which were as exciting as that. Anyway, nothing happened for a little while, and then went back to work, kept thinking about it here and there, checked in occasionally. The second it was the second or third lockdown, it was January. So the first lockdown was nice and sunny. That lockdown in January was miserable and depressing. Again, period of furlough for about a month or two, and I thought to myself, what's Zach doing? It's really cool.
Sitting alone in my room, just
Literally.
working on kit at that time is what I was doing.
And I thought that I don't know what it is I could do, but let's see if I can help out. I think we knew quite early on Zach was like very product design orientated, had a bit more kind of commercial like sales experience, and so I gave him a ring while I was on another walk and said, let's see what we can do together. I'll help out where I can. I knew the problems. I could see the problems. I have a sister with allergies. I have a penicillin allergy, not that that's highly relevant day to day, but I knew there were kind of fundamental stigma, mental health issues around allergies and how people with allergies were treated. And there was nights where I was like tossing and turning. I need to get involved with this. I need to do something. And so yeah, called up Zach and we just started working on it. And by July 2021, we both went full time, just trying to get this thing going.
It's funny you say like that stigma and unknown, but when these incidences that tragically do come to light in the public for is that there is real public outrage. Me and Owen were speaking about it, and I couldn't believe how long ago it was, that now we've got Natasha's Law. That was 2016. I thought it was quite recent. But that kind of tragedy does bring it to the forefront, and then it really does highlight that, do you know what? People want this to be sorted in one way or the other. They want the spotlight. I think there is that public awareness. Obviously, there's two very personal reasons for your sister and yourself there. Were you acutely aware? Did you do that kind of research into the public that there was a wider need, or was it pure like gut feel we need this to be done?
I mean, from a perspective of someone growing up living with allergies, I could not be aware of what was going on. My family were terrified of me going on holiday and eating out, and every time I forgot my adrenaline pens, I thought, oh, this will be the time it happens. Mm-hmm. And, no matter what, every time I go out with someone new, especially now that we actually run this business, if we go out to eat food and I just order and I say my allergies and I go through the process, everyone sort of like looks at me and they're like, oh, so this is what you do every time? I'm like, yeah, it's real. It is a thing, and it's on your mind. It can't not be on your mind 24/7. I think that's the bottom line. I know one of James's best mates that he goes on holiday with all the time. Like, it's always a real struggle.
I don't go on holiday all the time. Just for the record.
When you go on holiday together, it's a struggle. But no, and I think there's been scenarios on planes, there's been scenarios in trains, in restaurants, in hotels, in stadiums, in takeaway, in weddings. I think in the early days when I was doing like the research on the business, I put together like what I called a pitch deck. Really, it was me doing my own research on the story and the business and the problem. And I've just built page after page of case study of why did this happen? Where was this real, where was the downfall? And it's always like a chain reaction. Maybe they said the thing, but the training wasn't there. Maybe they didn't have the pens. Maybe there was a lack of public awareness. It's all things I've experienced, but luckily enough, never had it occur to me.
And like you say, they try to address the problems with the, Natasha's law, but that's very much focused on the responsibilities of restaurants or stuff that serves food, where they've got to be really explicit with labelling, but that is just a step, isn't it? Natasha's law is prepackaged for sale food, which is sandwiches, yogurt pots, things that go through that end up on a counter somewhere. Whereas if you've got something that's being served like in a canteen, that's a whole different experience. And then you've got things that are on menus, which is why you've now got Owen's law coming into play, where Owen Carey, not yours. No, so Owen Carey ordered a buttermilk burger at a Byron, and there was a miscommunication or an error with the ingredients, and unfortunately he passed away due to basically the wrong ingredients being listed or not the right ingredients being listed, and now they want all transparency of all menus.
It blows my mind that that's not something that is there from the jump, right?
Yeah.
And that just adds to the levels of anxiety that allergy sufferers.
Well, as someone
and not just the allergy sufferers, like you say, your family, the people who are aware of it as well, isn't it?
Well, the person with the allergy often leads the friend group or the family with where they eat, and that's a massive economic benefit to any restaurant or hospitality setting that is allergy conscious. But as someone very health conscious personally, I am super aware of seed oils and artificial ingredients and all that sort of stuff, and it just comes to a point where you've got everything to do with people just wanting to see what's in their food. It's like a simple level of transparency that could solve so many issues, but is so problematic the further down the supply chain you get, from the source materials, where people just list may contain on absolutely everything. So by the time it ends up in your Pret, you've no idea what's actually in it.
I do think that you're right. There were probably three big things that kind of led to this being the right time to do something like this. One was Natasha's incident, because a place like Pret is now synonymous with allergies, regardless of what they do.
So I said it, but the focus was on the company that done it wrong. But this is had an individual impact.
But a community could make a difference. The second thing was there was a petition that got spread. I can't remember when it was now. It might have been 2018, maybe 2013 or 2018, one of the two. But it was asking for access to pens in all different locations, and it got over 10,000 signatures, which meant that there was a response from the government. And they laid out basically a list of reasons as to why they can't do it right now, but why it is a good idea.
So it was more like why the NHS can't do it, why it can't be
why the government can't do it. But what we saw in that was essentially a list of things to tackle, a list of problems to tackle, that if we succeeded in tackling them, then the chance of there being access to pens in lots more places could happen. And then the last reason is probably COVID. That you actually saw on the back of COVID what hospitality venues, what workplaces were willing to do to make people feel comfortable in any given environment, whether it's putting glass shutters up or putting sanitizers in place. And why can't this kind of community come together to put relevant healthcare provisions in place in the same way they do with defibs or bleed kits or stab vests and all sorts nowadays?
I think it's actually really important to touch on James's point, because most people don't know the layers of complexity around the compliance to do with actually having an adrenaline pen even available. And so as someone with an allergy, if you are diagnosed with an allergy, you can be prescribed an adrenaline pen. I mean, to be honest, nowadays it's becoming harder and harder, and they're actually waiting to see if you even have anaphylaxis to then give you an adrenaline pen, which in itself is just problematic on so many levels. I myself have never had anaphylaxis, and therefore at this day and age I would probably have not been prescribed a pen, even though I know I have to carry one because it could happen, which is just for separately any organization, venue, a building to have adrenaline pens on site, they have to have an exemption from being prescribed essentially. So in 2017, there was a case where a young child passed away due to a severe allergic reaction and he didn't have a pen on him, or his own pen was out of date. The law changed to allow schools to purchase pens. There was also a similar exemption in that law that states businesses with an occupational health scheme can purchase adrenaline pens for its staff. You essentially have to qualify those two things and then prove that you are that business or that school, go through a bunch of rigmarole with compliance, and then say, okay, we're getting these pens, we're putting them on site. But otherwise, you cannot have adrenaline pens just like defibrillators. You cannot have the accessibility of the medication. And that's like a big part of the uphill battle that we have as a business. Firstly, we've been around since we launched in 2020. Sorry, we established ourselves in 2020. We officially launched at the start of last year. And so much of that time and process has been us getting a license from the government. It's been setting up processes, how we qualify businesses. So we launched for schools at the start of last year. We now work with about 400 schools across the UK. And we only started working with businesses about 5 months ago because we had to work really hard to establish a process where we can qualify an occupational health scheme for a business, which most people don't even really know if they have or not, let alone how it works and where the sign-off is. Thankfully for us, it's something we can now do for businesses that qualify, that makes it easier for them to have the pens on site. And then it's an internal process that once they've set up, but it's difficult.
Has it been a case of sort of, with those kinds of things, like learning as you go, just sort of tackling each obstacle as it comes? Because obviously your background in product design, and you never really get into it must be difficult getting to a point where you're like, oh, now I've got to deal with regulation, which is just not my background. Now I've got to deal with the compliance aspect of getting the product out there, which is also isn't your background. Was it just a case of learning as you go? There
is no degree that can teach you how to run a business, besides actually running a business. I think that the amount of stuff that we've just encountered and then had to run with, thankfully, I think we're both pretty quick learners, and we have a team that's highly adaptive. Only 4.5 of us, but we do a lot.
Leaning into that business side of things, and we'll go back to the stories and everything. You mentioned you've got funding and stuff to do. What's that journey been like? It's obviously a great thing to get funding because it allows you to, realise part of your vision, if not all of it, but is something else to think about. What is that impact? Obviously, the positive impact on the business to do things, but like at this personal level, how does it change you, or how do you react, and what's that impact when you go through those funding elements as well? Because you have that balance of trying to secure funding, but you still want to keep developing the product and getting that story out. How do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I think you go into that process not 100% sure about what it is that you actually want. you basically, because it's hard when you're at the beginning to say like, what's the outcome that I'm looking for, that then work backwards. And actually you just need to ask yourself, like, what do I actually need to get this thing started? Because I'll figure out the rest along the way. And I think we knew that if we wanted to have something that was scalable, we needed to invest in injection mold tools to produce thousands of these. So that was always going to take a lot of capital. And then we also found out that we needed a license to be able to wholesale the pens, so to procure and supply them. And that was taking a lot of time and effort. And then you actually just got to get big enough that the money you bring in can pay for everything. So I think we knew relatively early on that we needed a raise. I don't think we knew how grueling raising might be, or what requirements we needed at this point versus this point versus this point, or whether or not we were VC backable or this or that. So I think when we started, we were just like, let's get money in, allow us the freedom and the ability to make decisions to move things forward.
You said grueling there. What are the parts that are grueling? Is it just are they tough conversations with investors? Is it just like a grilling that takes a lot of time and effort?
Yeah, it's grueling in terms of it's like dating a little bit, which is that like you got to find the right fit. Yeah. And also,
did you feel like you were in a power of position though? Like what you wanted to choose your backer. It wasn't we need the money at all costs type
exactly
thing.
And there's been times where we've thought to ourselves, okay, we need the money, like we'll take whatever, like the deal that's on the table. But the majority of the time we've been in a position where we believe deeply in what we're doing. Mm-hmm. We know it has the potential to do a lot of good. We've seen it already do a lot of good. but we know that it has the potential to also be very big, and therefore it's us. It's like any interview. It's like us interviewing them as much as they're interviewing us, and we could argue they're getting a lot more out of it than we are from them. And are they willing to join the ride or like go through the roller coaster of building a startup? So yeah, I guess it's really in that respect, like finding the right people to bring in.
Yeah, and that balance of staying true to the continued development as well.
Yeah, because there's very much two types of funding, or at least like we've raised 3 times, and you're either raising reactively or proactively. Reactively is shit, we're running out of money. we need funding. We will justify whatever valuation and hope people get on board. Thankfully, that's only really happened to us kind of once. Majoritively, it's been proactive, conscious funding where, even in the first round, like we built a pilot, we had an idea, and we had schools ready to sign up, and then we just needed the funding to build what we had already ideated. We already had a website, we already had interest from so many parties. We used that money and we just ran with it. We did exactly what we said we were going to do. Brilliant. And then we could just raise again so easily off the back of that. And then there's times where you forecast things to happen and they don't, or the world events change things, or prices go up, and then all of a sudden you find yourself needing money. And I think what's been really important for us as healthcare and social impact founders is not compromising on the values that we know we need to stay true on. So maintaining a level of equity where as founders we know we have so much future potential in this business, so many things we need to do, so many doors to knock down. We also have a degree to which we just need to be really careful with who we have in the business, and we are so proud of every single partner, every single customer, and every single investor that we currently have on board, because they all truly believe in this mission with us.
So you've got like you say, it sounded like when you went through the raises, you got the money, it wasn't a case of, oh, now what do we do? That clarity just stayed
always
throughout.
knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
We
always knew where we needed to spend the money before we got it.
You'd already spent it.
Yeah.
And I think
he actually had.
if you go over kind of your socials and look, I've seen the warehouses that you've got and things, but that feeling when you see a load of the kits in a warehouse as a result of it must be so fulfilling.
That's like one of the things, like we were not compromising on being made in the UK. That was one of the things that we knew we wanted, and we had some investors saying, just go make it in China, you'll get it cheaper and whatever. And in the long term, we'd already done the research and spoken with so many other founders and knew that they were having issue after issue with whether their idea was being stolen, or whether they were just having language barriers, or whether there were just delays in shipping. Yeah,
the cost of shipping and freight was awful when we started looking right at the beginning, and we just knew instantly we didn't want to go through that headache.
And then sustainability. Like, why would we choose to ship something across the world every single time we needed it when we could just not do that? So we had the initial tools to make the kits made in China. They were shipped over to the UK to our Welsh manufacturing partner, and now every kit since then has been injection molded, firstly out of standard virgin plastic, and now recently in the last order of 1,000 kits made out of recycled plastic as well. Amazing. Which is just like so cool. And we have a day-to-day conversation with our manufacturing partners. Everything's just been chosen purposefully, and we're so proud of where we've come to now.
And you must be confident that hopefully when you go on this growth journey, you stay with that, isn't it? Because you do see so many businesses who purpose-led, very values-led in that, and then maybe get to a size or a scale, and those compromises do happen for whatever reason. And sometimes it is pressure from investors, isn't it?
And that's why it's so important to pick the right investors early on, if you can, and if you're fortunate enough, which I think we were.
I'd like to go back to the prototype. And how that looked, and sort of the challenges, some of the unique challenges you guys would have faced building that for the first time, having that first kit, and just looking at being like, is this what we wanted? Where do we go from here? How does that look? Can you talk us through the journey of getting that kit for the first time?
Yeah. So I graduated university with an idea that I designed on a CAD software. I'd prototyped it out of foam, then out of 3D printed material, painted it, and was like, this is my idea. I then graduated and never wanted to look at it again because I had invested like a year in it. I graduated peak COVID, and I was like, this is the last thing I want to do. And then pressure from friends and family were like, no, this is a really good idea. I had knowledge in freelance web design, so I built a website for what the kit render looked like, ended up getting some interested in it, basically sent that to a design agency where an old uni mate was working. And they were like, we could absolutely pick this up and help you make this something real, something proper. Thankfully, I had a friend who was supporting me at the time. He basically said, you could spend £100,000 creating this with a screen and speakers like you designed at uni, or you could spend £10,000 and design a briefcase. And it will go on the wall and it will still save lives. It will still have training and awareness. And, that was the first time I learned the real value of like an MVP, like a minimum viable product. It will do the fucking job. Just spend as little money as possible and get it out there as quick as possible. That was so valuable because we created 10 prototypes out of vacuum formed plastic. So we didn't have to invest in anything major. And we went on a little COVID Zoom call nurses forum for schools.
Royal College of Nurses, yeah.
Royal College of Nurses. We said, this is our little prototype. Do you like it? This is what we're doing. This is our mission. And they were like, fantastic. When can we sign up? And we were like, yeah, so they don't exist yet, but we'll come to you in like 5 months. We went and hand delivered these ourselves. We didn't have any infrastructure or anything. We sat down and had like a checklist of things we wanted to learn from every single school and partner. And over the course of, I think it was it September 2021 to March 2022, we piloted 10 kits in 7 schools across the UK with a briefcase essentially that said Ana on it, which was the brand at the time, short for anaphylaxis. After that pilot, we then did our investment round. We completely redesigned and developed the product into the kit with loads of feedback we got from the schools, including a better lock and key system, removing the inhaler and adding more space for adrenaline pens, improving the instructions, adding a back-end system with a training course, like so much that we learned from that pilot that if we'd have done in the first place, it just would have been a waste of time and money. And then when we officially launched with Kitt, the reaction was just like unbelievable. Like people were so excited. People were reaching out, signing up immediately. Obviously we had to qualify them and speak to them, whatever. But that MVP process, that pilot process was absolutely invaluable.
Amazing. I think it'd be really good to hear about what Kitt is and does in sort of the wholesale, because we touched on it very briefly, but we talked about the training aspect of the services you provide, the CPD accredited training that you give out. It's not just the pens, it's not just the kit, it's everything that comes with it that will essentially save lives.
James, you want to talk through?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way to look at it, which is what we had to get our head around at the beginning, is that we actually shouldn't see ourselves as like a product. Like we are a whole service, we're an all-in-one service, and that covers something that we talked about right at the beginning, which was tackling the stigma, tackling the mental health side of things. And you can't really do that just by giving them basically another way to stock pens.
Here you go, get on with it.
Exactly. You've got to give them something that keeps them accountable and also improves their confidence, so that if something did ever happen, you could treat them, you could minimize those risks of something bad happening. And so that's where the software, that's where the training, that's where the incident report forms all come in. Because if you've now got a good system in place, we're now saving them time, money, aggravation and everything else, while also giving them a system that helps them be more confident. And so that all-in-one service and something that we handhold them with over a period of time means that they're always improving their allergy awareness and they're always getting better. So that's a constant reminder of all the good they're doing and all the good that they're having in terms of the impact they're having onto other individuals in whatever ecosystem they're in.
I think that allergy awareness, and when we first spoke, like for me as a just a middle-aged bloke who's gone through life in a bit of ignorance, is I just didn't know you can develop allergies. It's like I didn't realise that you can be not allergic to peanuts today and be allergic to peanuts tomorrow. I just found that like mind-blowing. I like to think I'm kind of a person who keeps on top of things like that. I'm a curious person, interested, but it just shows the level of the education and awareness is needed, which goes beyond somebody having an anaphylactic shock and needing this, isn't it? It just shows there's so many layers to this. Yeah, so many gaps.
Yeah, I mean, from a perspective of the time that we've been around and the kits have been used, in the last, I guess, 2 years or under 2 years since launching, they've been used 8 times to treat life-threatening allergic reactions, and I think about 50% of those were people that didn't know they had allergies to something.
Wow.
Sort of a third were like adults, not pupils, and that was in schools. Most recent one was a bee sting causing anaphylaxis, 20 bee stings actually, from a beekeeper who had been stung before and who had no known allergies, and then in this occasion developed anaphylaxis to that bee sting. Separately, we had a woman who had a chest infection and then drank ginger beer, and that caused her to bring on anaphylaxis. They're called cofactors. There are all these things that can, anything from stress to tiredness to, a woman being on her period to having a cold and flu, that could bring on anaphylaxis when affected by something else. Wow. Or a kid having contentiously airborne anaphylaxis on a school bus due to someone eating a peanut bar behind him. So there's all these different things, and often we speak to people and they go, I don't know if we don't have any pupils with allergies in our class. And we're like, that's the most narrow-minded thing you can say, because what about the staff? What about the visitors? What about people that don't know they have allergies? And that's where we really say, no, it's really like your defibrillator. You're not saying, does anyone here have cardiac issues? Okay, we won't buy a defib then. It's that same argument.
You mentioned that kit's been used 8 times. Mm-hmm. There's obviously a hell of a lot of work, years gone into it, passion, sweat, blood, tears, that usual. That first time that you found out one had been kind of used to save a life, how did that feel?
You can go ahead. you were in tears.
I was in absolute tears.
Wow.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, it's really, 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 really bizarre to be a product designer.
Yeah.
And finally see the thing you created actually do the job it was made for. Like, when I had to become a salesperson from a product designer, that was one thing. But genuinely deep down, honestly, I was always like, is this going to do the job? Is it actually going to do the job? Do I really feel proud of the thing I've created? And it was not until that moment. I didn't realize it as well, but it was that day the instant report came through, like casual email comes through. I just was like, my entire worldview of what we were doing was completely flipped upside down. I was at home as well. We were still working from home. We only got an office a couple months ago and started working together. So we were all alone. And when it came to, it was James and Johnny came over and gave me a hug, and it was
a bit broken.
Yeah.
And I think we were all a bit in shock, but I think going from personal experience or secondhand experience, seeing you go through it, like that one really kind of shook you. And then I think we've looked back over the last 8 and seeing how each one individually has impacted us, like in slightly different ways.
You were really affected by sort of the 7th one, I think it was, like recently. Yeah. So for context, we had a good year under our belt before a kit was even used.
6 months.
Okay, it felt like a year. And then we had like another tick over slowly, and another. I think we had 3.
July, December, May.
Yeah.
July,
and then we've had 5 incidents occur in the last 2-3 months. Just like we had 2 that were like back to back, and it was just this total unexpected thing, because we were used to the 6-month period, and now we're at the point where we understand, okay, there's 600 kits out there across the UK. They're in registered schools, they're in qualifying businesses, they are being exposed to a whole bunch of stimuli every day, every year. Anything could happen at any time, and we could wake up and have another life-threatening reaction treated.
Yeah, I think the first 3 we took, like, okay, those are situations, this is how they've arisen. The ones that happened across September, and it was 3 in like 2 weeks, which was a bit mental, is we realised, well, this is going to happen more, because there's going to be more kits out there, so then there's going to be more chance for records to
it's
be
created.
It's a bit
of a paradox, that, isn't it? Is
yeah.
Because obviously you celebrate every time, obviously, a kit saves a life, but because of that, there's more and more.
Yeah.
It's not, there's more and more people suffering and, suffering tragedy.
The
and
incident's
things
going to
like that.
happen regardless of whether we're there or not,
Yeah.
right? So all we can do is say we are so bloody thankful the kit was
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and then in terms of celebrate, like it's weird because every time one comes in, we're just like, do we celebrate? What do we
We're
do
shell-shocked.
in these situations? Firstly, we check in with the school straight away. We try and find out what's happened, make sure everyone's okay. But like that's also something that we've realised is that at some point things are going to be maybe not perfect, or things are going to have repercussions that might last for years, whatever it might be. And like coming around to that is something that we've also had to get to grips with recently. But once we check in with them, we then check in with ourselves and we realise like, okay, great that it was there. Why did it happen in the first place? And it might have been a freak accident, but it might be because the awareness wasn't there, or that people weren't willing or capable of sharing kind of the thing that they were allergic to because they felt stigmatized, whatever it is. And so like every time we're learning, but we're never like hoping for the next reaction. It's a very weird one to go
I
through.
can imagine.
Is that something that you foresee in the future when you talk about sort of the awareness side of things? As you guys obviously will scale, you're obviously already so much more than the kits, but do you think that sort of, becoming advocates, becoming, I hate the word, influencers, becoming, known names within the anaphylactics and allergen landscape, that awareness, is that something important to you for you guys to build on down the road, whether it's tomorrow or 5 years time?
There is a huge amount of awareness we can raise every time a kit is used. And that is primarily because it's not because of what we're doing, but it's because of the fact that allergic reactions are occurring every single day. The only time they hit the news is when someone dies. That's just fact. Yeah. What we're doing is actually hitting the news when someone survives, which is the only time we can say, okay, these things are happening and there's a positive solution. It's not let's get reactive and create another a law, or a call for a campaign for something. It's no, this person actually had the reaction, but they're now okay because the thing that they needed was there. Let's get more of this in place. And that's so important to us. And previously, we were featured on Good Morning Britain. We were featured on BBC News. We were featured on Talk TV and The Times, The Independent, because these stories are so important.
And now the Affected podcast.
Top of the tree.
Just building on Zach's point, I think one is definitely just having positive stories out there.
Yeah.
Like if there are 2-3 million allergy sufferers out there in the UK, like them seeing good stories is going to be super helpful, because all you see in the news these days is a lot of rubbish, really. A lot of like scaremongering, a lot of fear. But I think the other thing, and you mentioned it before, is a platform to actually make a difference. And I think actually not veering away from doing some campaigning or having a voice big enough to lead the charge on, let's say, subsidising kits in schools or subsidising pens in schools. You mentioned before the Oliver King Foundation. They put defibs through the Department of Education in every state school across the country. That was a reactive approach to the Oliver King incident 12 years ago. We don't want there to be that reactive approach. We want to have that proactive kind of need. So driving something like that, that's also kind of where the platform attractiveness comes from.
How have you mentioned, all of the news channels and the media? How as individuals, how have you felt with like that spotlight at a personal level? Obviously, it's a huge benefit for the business and at a commercial level. But you as like individuals, like having that spotlight on you, have you dealt with that?
We've got better at it every time.
Yeah.
I think both better at dealing with it and better at refining the story of what we want to say and how we want to say it. I think, in all honesty, we're in a very tight compliance regulated space, and so a lot of the time we're talking about this, we have to be really knowledgeable and careful about what we say and how we say it, just to make sure that we're being compliant, let alone anything else. But from a personal point of view of myself living with allergies and being able to tell these stories, it's immensely fulfilling. Like it's not about me, it's about the company, and saying that the company is doing this team has so much growth. Every time we tell these stories, we're saying we're in 300 schools, 400 schools, 500 schools, and now qualifying businesses, and we want to go here and there and everywhere. And every time they give us a new platform to expand from.
We're talking about things that we can celebrate, and you guys have hit some incredible milestones. What are the next milestones you're eyeing up? What are you looking at next? Who are you looking at next? Where are you looking at next? What does the immediate future and beyond look like for you guys?
Big one.
I think just before that is like break down where are Kitt today,
Yeah.
physically and things.
So I guess right now we're into what 22 months since we've actually launched the kits to go out there. We're in hundreds of schools. I guess in terms of our school journey, we want to see hundreds more, if not thousands more, schools adopting these. Our end goal, the end milestone to aim for was, as I said before, that kind of standardized kit in every location. School children no longer having that fear and that stigma above their head around allergies. And then, as Zach mentioned before, we only launched into businesses that qualify through their OC Health scheme only about 5 months ago. So we've learned a lot from those 5 months, and we know a lot more now than we did then. But seeing the big stakeholders, people that have a lot of kind of brand integrity attached to us, would be really helpful. So seeing, let's say for example, a milestone or a wish list that we've got on our kind of whiteboard in the office is, I'd love to see Pret have kits in place. I think in terms of impact for those with allergies, seeing someone like that take that step forward into making a standardized approach towards allergy care accessible, obviously through their OC Health arrangement, but having that as a standardized way of going about putting kits into all sorts of places, I'd love to see that. Zach's wish list is TFL, but yeah, you can go into why that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's as we have printed in very large letters on our wall in the office, every defibrillator's next door neighbor. And so where is the highest likelihood you're going to see a kit? Well, it's in transport. So public transport, TFL, major airports, Heathrow. Obviously, again, we have to work through this messy compliance landscape of making sure the business qualifies through their occupational health scheme, which is one thing we'd love to work on and make easier. And obviously, as James said, work with the government to hopefully open up those regulations in the future. But for now, it's just about us becoming absolutely phenomenal at working with what we've got. And I mean, since launching a partnership with St. John Ambulance about a week, where are we now? Thursday, last Monday, literally. We had 400 inquiries from schools and businesses off the back of one email from St. John Ambulance. So the thought of getting major stakeholders that can then shout about what we're doing, that will be the biggest way in which we can grow. And so we're just working through all those leads now.
Any designs on going beyond the UK? Does that not even enter your head at the moment? Just another load of compliance and regulation and laws.
That's really it. It's a big shiny object that gets thrown about a little bit, and we try and stay clear of it.
I don't like to use this word, but is a business ultimately as well. Are there competitors in like other parts of the world, or even in the UK?
From what we've seen, there's no one doing the full service, as it were. Like, there are people providing a little lunchbox to keep your pens in. There are some people providing the pens online. There are people providing training, but actually wrapping it all in together in something that takes away a lot of the kind of onus and fear. We haven't really seen anything pop up. We would love to go abroad, but it's a matter of time. And to be honest, I think when we started it, we knew that we wanted to focus on the UK, and we knew we wanted to focus on like creating something at home that made an impact, made a difference. So we need to be more than 4 people, in all honesty, to be able to go abroad.
I know a recruitment company who maybe helped that.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
But equally, do you think should that come like visionary down the line? Would you take the same approach? For example, if you went to launch in Germany, would you look to manufacture kit in Germany for the German market?
So the actual kit is very repeatable.
Yeah.
The stickers and the design obviously needs to be changed.
Yeah.
Whether or not we have like, I don't know, more tools in another country, or we have a third party or a license. It's just all got to be figured out. And I guess it's figuring out where's next. Like we've been approached by a handful of different countries and all sorts of locations, and as much as Zach wants to go to Australia, it's so far away. So it's about figuring out where's right to go next, and then where's kind of right after that.
What a great position to be in, though, to, don't think like you need to do it, but the options are there. That's a good place to be in, isn't it?
We're like drowning in demand right now, which is phenomenal. And over the time we've been around, we've had, whether it's Instagram messages or emails, we get requests from, please can these go in my schools in Canada, please can you reach out to this restaurant in Ireland, please can you launch in Thailand, please, doctors reaching out to us, because there's a huge allergy presence in Australia, just saying.
Are you willing to go?
Again, every defibrillator's next door neighbor is the dream. So
how do you hold back when you know that demand's there as individuals, as a both from wanting to make the difference that you spoke about a lot, but also from a business point of view? How do you keep that restraint going?
If you're not laser focused, you'll get nothing done.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing. Like, we have every opportunity in the world that comes to us because we're the only people doing it, and if we were to do all those opportunities, we wouldn't get any of them done. So the amount of times people come up to us and say, when a kit's going to be on planes, and we say, okay.
I spoke about that when we first
It's the one thing everyone says, because it's the news story that everyone hears when a kit's, and the truth of the matter is, a lot of planes say they currently already have adrenaline pens. Whether they do or not is another thing. Whether they would use them because they don't have a doctor on board, because they have to emergency land, because they don't have training, and because, to be honest, their catering system is the real problem. That's the whole other thing. And then you've got the fact that kits in their current format are not designed to be drilled into a plain wall. So it's about actually addressing the problem, and saying, okay, would just putting a kit in a plane solve the problem of allergies in planes? No, there is so much more we need to do, and that is when we will move into that market.
Because in an ideal world, in those situations, you don't want kit to be used.
Yeah, exactly.
Thing, yeah.
Just as the same in all of the others, but in a plane, it's such a specific scenario. And equally with, I think with businesses, if you look at businesses in general, we worked with schools for a year and a half before we even touched them, because we just weren't ready for it. But we were getting inquiries left, right, and center from them, and we just said, we can't yet. And then when we did, we could. So, in a way, you create FOMO, you create a wait list, but also, again, we have to protect our medical license, our wholesaler dealer authorization. So much we have to think about.
It must have been an incredible journey from university to now, and I think one of the great things must be being able to do this with a friend of yours as well. Is got to be the dream, right? I have a feeling that you're the restraint guy. You're the wrangler of.
Someone's got to be.
Yeah. Can you just talk a little, like, just from a personal level, how has that been, sort of being able to work with a close friend and really, like, there can't be that many people out there who said, I have had the opportunity to change lives with a close friend of mine, and this is the journey that we get to go on together, and that must be such a privilege.
The team we have now is like, it's like a dream team, literally. Johnny is my best mate. I've known him my entire life. He is now our head of growth. He was the one that when I finished university said, I really need to work on this idea. And I took his advice and I went with it. He introduced me to James on a holiday, and then a year later he joined the business. And so Simon, who's our CTO, I went to school with him. I've known him all my life as well. He was the initial person that I went on like COVID walks about how would the technology work. He helped us design our first QR code to scan the pilot kits, and now he's helped us build out our entire tech software. And then, of course, James, like, when I was working on this alone, I knew I needed a co-founder. Like, this is not something I could do, or I don't think anyone could do on their own. And why would you want to do that anyway? I don't understand going into business solo. But we have an absolutely unbelievable chemistry as a team. And, we've hired Olivia recently, which is the first person that's not a friend of ours that's now in the business. And she's phenomenal. So, like, every single day we get to work as a team, as friends. And obviously there has been difficulties, you know, having friends with and family with equity and with salaries and with responsibilities and KPIs and all this sort of stuff. Like, it creates issues, but I think overall the benefits far outweigh the negatives.
So you hold those values to such a standard, right? When you go through those issues and you're like, you hit those roadblocks.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing. This is the values. This is the purpose. Here is what we're doing. Amazing. I always like to end with some advice, and I think we're in a unique position here where I can ask you guys for some advice on people who may be starting their own journey with business and going into creating something that they feel they can do good with. We work with a lot of companies, startup biotechs, who are creating new medicine, creating new devices that they hope will go on to save countless lives. That is also fraught with difficulties and insecurity, I guess, as well. What would you say to those people who are beginning that journey, thinking about taking those first few steps?
You want to start?
Go for it.
I would just say stay true to the problem. Like, it's so easy when you start developing a solution to invest time and money and effort into something and then find out there's actually a better version of it, or something else you could do, or competitors, or you're getting outweighed by shareholders, and constantly having that idea of actually understanding, you know, personally I live with allergies, so I can't get away from the problem, but making sure that you are on the ground every single day, making sure you're actually solving the thing you set out to solve in the first place, and not just running away with how can we make the most revenue, how can we not lose the money we've already invested. I think that's probably the most important thing in this space.
Just start. Just it's going to be difficult. You're going to fail. You're going to pick yourself up, but just start. Just get going. And find. You're not going to have all of the answers, and you're not going to have all of the skill sets you're going to need to get going. So find other people you can help out, support, whether that's advisors, investors, friends, business partners, whatever it might be. Just start, and then find people you can lean on when you need to.
I just want to say a huge thank you to you guys. You're going to be doing some amazing things, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity to work on some more content with you guys as well moving forward. Just love being just around people who are doing amazing things within the space of life sciences. Where can the people find you?
Great question. kittmedical.com, KITT medical. Go there, find out loads more about us, inquire if you're interested in kits in your school or business. And we're also on social media at kittmedical.com. Do a lot on Instagram.
I was going to say, you were about to not promote social media.
Of course I'm going
at Kitt Medical on all the social media.
We went viral on TikTok.
Look below.
It's adding more work for me. Listen, we really enjoyed having you guys here, and like I said it 1,000 times, but the stuff you guys are doing within the space is unbelievable. Changing lives, that feeling must be so good for you guys, and to hear and to be able to see your journey where it's going to be. I think that's our privilege to be able to share in that with you as well. I'd like to say a thank you to everyone who's watching at home. I don't think I've ever said that. I don't know why I said that. If you're looking for more life sciences insights, you can head over to www.meetlifesciences.com/media-hub, or you can find all of our content over on our YouTube channel. Just want to say a huge thank you to you guys. Please follow their journey, get on it early, see the amazing things they're going to do, and celebrate the work they're doing. And cheers, Glenn. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.